Congressman now from opposite sides of the aisle. Democrat Adam Schiff is a member of the House Intelligence Committee. He says the current proposal is too broad. Republican Peter King is the chairman of the Counterterrorism and Intelligence Subcommittee in the House. He says the president has the authority to act even if Congress votes no. First of all, Congressman King, what do you make of this draft resolution that the Senate Foreign Relations Committee has come up with, giving the president the authority to strike in a limited way over the next 60 days with an option of adding another 30 days if necessary?
Yeah, obviously, I have to look at it more carefully, but based on what I've heard and seen tonight, I would vote for it. I mean, I do support the president taking action. I'm similar to John McCain to this extent, in that I believe, though, that if we are going to take action, it has to be meaningful action. Otherwise, it just may have a cosmetic appeal, but serve no real long-term purpose and actually be counterproductive. So I would support a strong attempt to degrade the weapons capacity of both chemical weapons and also the delivery systems of Syria.
Congressman Schiff, the language says the president would be authorized to engage in a limited and tailored manner against legitimate military targets in Syria. Would you vote for this resolution?
Well, I think the Senate language is certainly a step in the right direction. I'll need to look at it further, and one of the issues that I'm most concerned about and communicated to the White House is they say no boots on the ground. I would want to make sure that the resolution made that abundantly clear, unless we're talking about having to rescue someone. I think no one wants to see us turn this into a boots-on-the-ground situation or further entangle us in the civil war. So I think it's movement in the right direction. The other issue, I think, Wolf, is can we put together an international coalition to enforce this international norm? I think it's very important that the United States not be seen as acting alone here. And I think that there are plenty of international partners who should step forward, but there's still a very open question about whether they will.
Tell us, Congressman King, why you think it was a mistake for the president even to come to Congress. You would have wanted him just to use his executive authority and get the job done without Congress. Is that right?
Well, in going back over the last 30, 40 years, in almost every instance such as this, presidents have acted without going to Congress. President Reagan, President Clinton, I think, acted 6 times. He carried out bombing attacks during his presidency. President Eisenhower, go back to the 1950s. But the point I was, was really trying to make, excuse me, was that the president did this at the last moment. If he knew a year ago that the red line was drawn on chemical weapons, if he intended to bring Congress in, that should have been part of his plan from the start. Instead, he said nothing at all about Congress. He had Secretary Kerry and Secretary Gates going out there basically saying we're ready to go. He gave no indication at all that Congress was going to be involved. And then at the very last moment, it seemed like cover for him, he said he was going to let Congress decide. So he didn't have to have Congress involved in the first place. If he did intend them to have them involved, he should have brought us in early on so it didn't look like a last-minute flinching on his part, which to me just causes a lack of credibility on his part and ultimately on the country's part because he's the commander-in-chief. But I strongly believe he has a constitutional right to launch these attacks.
Congressman Schiff, you want to respond to that?
I do. I think the president was right to come to the Congress, both as a constitutional matter, as a member of a co-equal branch with the power to declare war. I think it was the right decision. But more than that, I also think that it was the right decision in terms of getting the country behind this action if we undertake it. It's going to be very important that the American people are behind what the president does, that the Congress is behind it, that he is not seen as acting alone. I think, as he has pointed out, that will strengthen his hand in dealing and staring down Bashar Assad. So I think it's very important to get the buy-in of the Congress. It is difficult. It does pose risks. And here you're going to have a group of libertarian isolationists on the one side unwilling to support it. And you'll have many very strongly anti-war Democrats unwilling to support it. So no easy task, but I think an important responsibility of the Congress to weigh this and vote accordingly.
Speaking of libertarian isolationists or non-interventionists, as they prefer to be called, Senator Rand Paul is one of them. Congressman King, he's a Republican. Rand Paul might be a Republican presidential candidate in 2016. He had a very testy exchange with Secretary Kerry. I'll play the clip.
The president is asking for the authority to do a limited action that will degrade the capacity of a tyrant who has been using chemical weapons to kill his own people.
But I think by doing so, you announce...
It's a limited. It's limited.
By doing so, you announce in advance that your goal is not winning.
But that's not...
And I think the last 50 years of secretaries of defense would say,
Senator,
if your goal is not to win, you shouldn't be involved.
Do you want to go to war in Syria? Of course not. Everybody, 100% of Americans will say no. We say no. We don't want to go to war in Syria either. It's not what we're here to ask. The president is not asking you to go to war. He's not asking you to declare war. He's not asking you to send one American troop to war.
How significant, Congressman King, is the Rand Paul wing now of the Republican Party, who basically want to stay out of these foreign affairs?
I think it's an increasingly dangerous isolationist wing in the party. I think it's very dangerous to the party and very dangerous to the country. We can have honest differences over whether we should go to war, whether we should engage in combat. Those are legitimate differences. But Rand Paul basically always comes down on the side of an isolationist, withdraw from the world perspective. I thought Republicans got rid of that with Charles Lindbergh in the 1930s. If I could just go back to what Adam said before, Adam, if the president wanted to get Congress involved, he should have said so from the start. Because by doing it at the last moment, it looked to me as a sense of panic on his part. Rather than all week, Jay Carney was saying he didn't need congressional support. By doing it at the 11th hour, I think it sent a very wrong signal.
You know, on this issue, and you can respond, and I want you to respond, Congressman Schiff, but I'm going to put up a poll, a new ABC News Washington Post poll on launching military strikes against the Syrian government. A lot of Americans are opposed, 59%. Take a look at this, oppose U.S. launching missile strikes, 36 support. If you're going to do it, you're going to have to convince a lot of Americans that this is the right thing to do, because there's an enormous amount of skepticism out there, especially after Iraq, especially after Afghanistan.
Well, that's absolutely true, Wolf, and I really think that the administration has a case that they're going to have to take right to the American people, and probably the president has the capability of doing that. I've been urging the White House to speak directly in a primetime address and outline why this is so important, why this is important to our national security interest, why we have to draw a bright line when it comes to the use of chemical weapons and hold a dictator who gasses his own people accountable. So that case has yet to be made, and I think those polls are reflective of that. But just to respond to what Peter was saying, I think that in part the president was responding to what a lot of members of Congress were demanding, and that is that he come before the Congress, that he consult with us, and more than that, that he bring this to a vote. And it's hard to hold the president to fault when so many members of Congress weighed in and said this is exactly what we want you to do. So I think it strengthens his hand ultimately if this is approved constitutionally. I think it was the right decision, and I think he was also responding to what a great many members of the party, both parties, Democrats and Republicans, were calling on him to do, and that is bring this to a vote.
Yeah, there's going to be a vote that'll pass in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee tomorrow. Almost certainly will pass in the Senate. The key, though, is the House of Representatives, because there are not only Republicans but plenty of Democrats who are very skeptical of this whole affair. Congressman Schiff, Congressman King, to both of you, thanks very much.